Have you ever witnessed strange lights in the sky or experienced missing time? If so, you're not alone. These high strangeness incidents happen to people every day, all over the world, and we want to get to the bottom of them. Since 1969, MUFON has been at the forefront of UFO investigations, and we're not stopping now. Join Alex and Ruben, a team of highly skilled MUFON field investigators with years of experience committed to getting to the truth. We'll investigate UFO events through guest interviews and witness accounts, analyzing data from various sources. Let's work together to unravel the mysteries of the unknown and get answers to the questions that have been unanswered for so long.
Hello and welcome to MUFON Up Close. I'm your host, Alex Susia, with my co-host, Ruben Uriarte.
Hey, Alex. Great to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. Very excited for our guest today. Before we hop into our guest, though, I wanted to share with you, Ruben, and our guests an interesting case that kind of dropped into my lap recently.
Oh, yeah.
Ruben, how familiar are you, or have you had any cases with animal mutilation?
No, not directly, but I was involved in a case of an elk being abducted in Washington, a state that I had served as an interpreter for Washington State MUFON, and helped interpret for the witnesses there. It was a very interesting case. But as far as cattle mutilations, it's very rare.
So this wasn't a case I was assigned through MUFON, but this is a case where I'd worked on a different sighting case of orbs with a witness in Nocano, Texas. So this is northern Texas, right near the border. Mm-hmm. They sent me, this was, a couple months after we'd spoken, but they said, hey, I had this weird event happen on my ranch that I wanted to talk to you about. So November 18th, the witness is driving around doing their check on the cattle when they see one cow lying on its side from a distance. As they drove up to it, they noticed that something was very unusual because it was lying on its side and it was dead. Now, I'm going to show you the picture that the witness sent me of, what this cow looked like when he got to it. Now, what you're seeing there is the face has been completely skinned from this cow.
Oh, wow.
So that is bare skull that you're seeing on this cow. The witness reported that the face was skinned. There was an incision in the stomach, and there was also some incisions on the butt as well of this animal. There were no signs of struggle and no blood anywhere near here. No tracks, nothing else that indicated other animals had gotten to it. They kind of let this sit in the field for a few days and no animals went near it. Normally, he said, in this type of environment, an animal's out there and it's eaten, within that day by different predators and other things. Nothing wanted to touch this, including all the farmers. So this is my first real case that I've actually had somebody send me these pictures, and just actually seeing the skull kind of skin like that is really, really something.
Quick question. Question here, Alex. In the background, you see more cattle. Is there a fence there, or?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Is it looks like there is some kind of a fence. Maybe it's like a fence, and there was like a gate somewhere over there where they would kind of pass from field to field. But this one, for some reason, was the only one in this particular area. The other cattle had moved on to graze elsewhere by the time that he got there.
Wow.
But so yeah, just wanted to share that. I always love these interesting cases, but ones that come with fascinating pictures like that are always fun to see.
Yeah, that's definitely the classic cattle mutilation. The skin, it's very heartbreaking seeing these animals.
I was able to confirm, because I've read a lot about these. So I was able to confirm, I asked him, was the tongue there? And he was like, now that you mention it, the tongue was missing. I didn't notice that at first, but when you asked me that, the tongue was not there.
Wow. I know that in our MUFON investigator manual, there's a section there on cattle mutilations. Just wondering if you used that or had a look at it.
Yeah, I've taken a look at it. It's kind of interesting because it does give you some precautions as to, how to handle it. I don't think I've read about very many cases where these are, radioactive, or people do get, infections with these kind of things.
Yeah. Was there like any, or do you know of any imprint of the cattle, like it was raised and then dropped?
It didn't look like it. I took a look at the pictures and didn't notice there was any kind of like imprint, and the witness didn't note anything either unusual about like the area that it was laying.
And this was in Texas.
Yeah, this was in northern Texas.
Yeah, you got a good case there.
Yeah, and definitely I've been communicating with the witness, seeing if there's any other information, but definitely a good one.
Wow. I just wanted to ask you real quickly your opinion of the recent explanation of the drones. It was released by the White House representative. She mentioned that they were part of the FAA doing test flights or flying these things, and just wondering what your take was on it.
I mean, it sounds right. My kind of interpretation of it was that these are some kind of government something, because they weren't shooting them down. They weren't going after them. They weren't, chasing them or circling them. They just kind of let them go and said, yes, there are drones in the sky. So for them to come out later and say, yes, this was part of something that the aviation was doing, totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's interesting that they didn't say that earlier, that it was FAA, even though there was air bases being, in an air base. They were in air base incursions, and they had to stop traffic. And there was a press conference that the FAA was there, but they didn't mention anything. But I think, there's still a little mysteries behind it. And
the way that I'm reading it too is I'm wondering, maybe they're pulling a little bit of, sleight of hand. So, put the drones up in the sky while they really do something else behind the scenes, draw our attention away from that.
Yeah.
We just don't know what they're drawing our attention away from yet.
Well, I look forward to our guest that we have. He was a guest before, and
let me go ahead and read out his bio. We're very excited to have him back again. Craig Compobasso, a multiple award-winning filmmaker and Emmy-nominated casting director, was 15 when he started in the entertainment business. His young acting career was off to a great start. He landed his first national commercial for McDonald's chicken sandwich and spoke his first line of dialogue to Tuesday Weld in the movie of a week. After graduating high school at age 17, Craig went to work behind the scenes on such blockbuster film classics as Frank Herbert's Dune, directed by David Lynch, and 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Conan the Destroyer and Total Recall. He began his casting career on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories. He received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Casting for a series on David E. Kelly's Picket Fences. With over 100 film and television projects under his casting belt, Craig's casting career spans 3 decades. Craig's mother, Maria Donna King Campobasso, told him from the time she was pregnant with him that she knew he would become a writer. He fulfilled that prophecy when he was 26 after he experienced a life-changing spiritual awakening. That's when the 4-part The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga book series was born. It will soon expand into 7 fully illustrated volumes. His passion is to write stories that provoke the readers to think, to raise their consciousness, to expand their mind about creation, while still entertaining in the Hollywood tradition. Craig has directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Dr. Frank E. Stranges. After production, the short film collected accolades. In September 2014, it won Best Sci-Fi Film at the Burbank International Film Festival, selling out all 275 seats, a first for the festival. In 2015, it won a Remmy Award at the World Fest Houston International Film Festival for Best Sci-Fi Short. Craig is currently gearing up for the feature film. Craig has appeared on many radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie and Fade to Black with Jimmy Church. He has also been a guest on the Open Minds talk show with Regina Meredith and Beyond Belief, hosted by George Norrie on Gaia.com. Craig has also made a few appearances on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, where Giorgio Tsoukalos is the main ancient astronaut theorist, and was on the latest season of Gaia TV's Deep Space and the 2022 season of Travel Channel's UFO Witness. His best-selling book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, The Ultimate Guide to Greys, Reptilians, Hybrids, and Nordics, is from Red Wheel Weiser Publishers under the MUFON imprint. Craig has written, produced, and directed the documentary to his ET Almanac book and has brought the ETs to life through CGI computer-generated images. It has now been released, and we are excited to talk about that documentary with him today. Please join us in welcoming Craig.
Thank you. It's kind of weird to hear somebody like say your whole past.
There's just so much there. I don't even know where to start. You know, such an impressive background, Craig.
I know. But it's been a fun ride. That's all I can say. I mean, I love the film business and I love ufology. So I kind of married the two. My biological father married the two as well. I didn't know. I never met him. I didn't know him. But when I was writing the ET Almanac book, I met a genealogist who was related to me. And I asked her if she could find him. And she goes, oh, yeah, I can find anybody. So she did. She said, I'm sorry to say he passed away in, 2006. But, this is where he's buried. And, I went down there. I asked them, I said, do you have a name in your computer of anybody that called, to pick up the body? Mm-hmm. And she looked and she goes, yes, I do. And she said, but I don't have a number. So she gave me the guy's name, different last name than his. And I went home, looked him up on the internet, literally lived around the corner from me. So I wrote him a letter, put my picture in there, said, if you know anybody, in Fred's family, please forward this. And then, I got a call a couple days later from his son. And I said, oh, was your dad friends with Fred? He goes, no, it's actually his half brother. Oh. And I go, oh, so you're my cousin. And he goes, yeah. He goes, it's just so weird. You look just like him. Right. I knew nothing about him. My mother didn't know much about him. So of course I got to have dinner with, he has three sons, my uncle. And so I went with him and the son that called me, and we had a 3-hour dinner. And I said, just tell me everything. An hour in, he said, Fred wanted to be in the Air Force and fly airplanes. And so he begged our mother to sign a piece of paper for him to go into the Air Guard. And so she did, and he went in early, and they put him in the Air Force. And he said, oh, yeah, and by the way, he was in that Project Blue Book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my face literally fell, and I was like, I couldn't even believe that. But then it even gets... not stranger, but it just gets even more interesting that, he was there for many, many years. He moved up the ladder quite quickly. And when he left and came back to LA, he ultimately became the head of construction at Warner Brothers and for film and television. So here he was working for Blue Book and building sets. Here I'm writing for MUFON and casting movies.
Wow.
Coming full circle.
It's full circle. It's like in the DNA. And so now, of course, now I have pictures of them. I never even had a picture. All that stuff. So, of course, I grilled all three of my cousins, and they said, oh, we used to beg him to tell us something, and he never would. He never would. He'd just say, yeah, people say that they fly around out there. So anyway, so I just thought that for me was one of the most mind-blowing stories, right? Wow. And it happened while I was writing the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. So, yeah.
Wow. Craig, I was wondering, do you live in Southern California in LA?
Yes, I do.
Oh, were you impacted by the fires?
Well, there were several going on at once, and one was close, and then another one was close. If the winds had kept up and they blew my way, we would have been evacuated, but the winds blew it the opposite way in both fires. Good. And so I was not evacuated, but you know, I have friends that lost their homes, I had friends that were evacuated, and you know, and some that had to leave because some friends in Malibu that had to leave because they had no cell phone service, no power, nothing. And you know, it's like a death trap there. There's only, you know, a few ways out. So so you know, you definitely have to be safe.
Yes. Thank God you came out okay, and you and your family and that.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Since the last time that we spoke, Craig, I went and got out and reread the copy of Stranger at the Pentagon, and watched your video. And both were just phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I've you know, I had DVDs for people, but I sold out, so they can watch it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's exactly how I saw it. Was on Amazon.
Yeah, or on Vimeo, you can rent it, or you can download it, purchase it. You know, the whole movie on Vimeo. So that right there is where people can rent the ET Species Almanac video on Vimeo as well. So yeah, that was really fun doing that. It was an amazing experience. You know, Dr. Frank had passed, and I had, you know, worked with him for years on writing the script. And then he passed away, and I just sort of shelved it. And, you know, and then many years later, I just got the inspiration to make the short film because I had worked on Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow as one of the casting directors. And I also worked with one of the producers who did the Saw movies. And what it was fascinating is both those films got funded because they made a short film, right? So people can see. So I thought, I'm going to do that as well. And, you know, you use it as a sort of proof of concept film and say, look, you know, if I could do this with a little bit of money, imagine what I could do with a whole lot of money.
Is the plan then to make it into a full length at some point?
Yeah. Everything is ready to go except the money, right? I'm always talking to people about money, or, you know, I've turned down deals because they just weren't right. You know, everybody has their own thing. You know, they want to change the story. They want to, you know, they want to make a contemporary with a current president. They want to do all different kinds of things. And I'm like, you can't do that. It's history, you know? So anyway, but yeah, that will be my pride and joy to make that into a feature film. And the script is great. So it's really, really good.
We'll have to keep our eyes out. You know, maybe sometime I'll have to get a copy of that script to read it. You know, the story itself is just so fascinating. I wish that there's not enough written about it. You know, the book itself is great, but it's almost like it leaves you wanting more.
Well, it does leave you wanting more. And I did that with the short film as well. Actually, the short film, I took scenes from the original, from the big script, and I just sewed them together. I wasn't really making a short film to go out into the public. I was making a proof of concept film for investors. But then, you know, the Burbank Film Festival found out about it, and he called. He goes, "Oh, would you show it to me? I want to see it." And I wasn't thinking about putting it in a festival, so I went down. I went to the guy's house. I showed it to him, and he goes, "I'm putting this right away in the festival." And I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." So we went in the festival, and you know, and we won, which was fantastic. And there's so many people that wanted it, like what you said earlier. There were 275 seats. Every seat was sold. They put on another showing at midnight, and that was half full at midnight for people to see it. So so it was really an amazing experience on my YouTube channel. If people want to see, we had a red carpet, and lots of ufologists and lots of people that were there were interviewed on the red carpet, including, all the actors that were in it. Jeff Jocelyn, who played Valthor, Eileen Davidson, who played Dina Thor. And at the time, Eileen and I have been best friends for over 40 some years. And I asked her, if she would do this for me. And, she starred in lots of movies, and she stars on The Young and the Restless as Ashley Abbott. And so she said, yeah, of course. But by the time we put it together, she was a Beverly Hills housewife. So at our screening were all the Beverly Hills housewives. So we were actually on the Beverly Hills Housewives.
Wow.
I know. It was pretty, pretty amazing.
The crossover you weren't expecting.
No, but it got so much publicity that way. And so, one producer put it into the other film festival. I didn't really want to do the festival circuit because it just takes too much time. Mm-hmm. So I only put it in those, and we won both of those, which was great. And but it took on an energy of its own, and people from all over the world. There were screenings in Germany, Austria, and these things where there were over 500 people came to see a short film, right? In English, and they didn't even understand it in English. And they said that they were standing up and applauding because, they're much more into this than, even though we're into it here in America, they're like really into it in Europe, like really into it. So, I remember I was doing a radio show in Canada. It was a French man. He only spoke French. So there was an interpreter, and it was their time, like midnight, right? And wherever they were, because it wasn't on the same, like Vancouver's the same time as us, but I can't remember exactly where it was. And, and then at a certain point, I was just seeing them both, and he was interpreting. And then I said, it sounds like there's noise in the background. Where are you? And they turned the camera around. There was a gigantic audience there just to listen to the radio show.
Wow.
People were like, it was like well over 500 to 700 people in this auditorium.
Jeez. Wow.
And, and it goes back to when Dr. Frank used to go around afterwards. I have this, his scrap albums. He went to Korea. And when he was there, if you can imagine Dodger Stadium filled to the gills and then extended out, that's how many people came to hear him talk about Valiant Thor.
Wow.
And I have the pictures to prove it. It's, and I think he did 2 things there, and he did them in other places as well that, brought many, many crowds. And, in Mainz, Germany, he was on the same stage as Oberith, what's the big scientist that came from Germany over here, Werner von Braun. He was there, all these people. So, he was traveling around. Dawn and Thawne, who are Val's vice commanders, always traveled with him to protect him. So they were always, in another room or something where they could be very closely available. Sometimes when he did his own seminars, they would show up and they'd be in the audience, and sometimes some of the guests would spot them, and that kind of thing. Or, when Dr. Frank used to do his seminars, he did them twice a year. called the Inner Circle at the Rio Hotel. And sometimes some of the people that were there would see Dawn or Thawne or the commander coming in. They always called Val the commander, coming in like to the hotel to visit Dr. Frank. So I never did. I wish I had. I mean, I would love to have seen them in person. Everybody would like to meet them in person. I mean, I meet them up here, right? You know, when I was writing the script, a lot of it after the first draft was done telepathically. They were done in downloads, and I'd wake up in the morning with all the notes. So it was a fascinating process.
Wow.
Are there any? Go ahead, Ruben. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious that the time frame, or what was when the year?
Well, I met Dr. Frank in 2001 or 2. I can't remember the exact date. And I thought I was just going to have a fan lunch, me being the fan, and you know, and I had a nice long lunch with him, and I thought that was going to be it. And then he stayed in touch, and we quickly bonded, and you know, we talked every week. I would drive out to where he lived in Chatsworth and have lunch with him at least once a week or every other week. And then when I decided that, you know, when he told me all of his fails with the script over the years, and I agreed to write it, I said, well, I'm going to have to sit with you for a very long time, and you're just going to have to tell me all your stories, because, you know, the book is just vignettes of stories. So I need an expansion. So I did that. I went and I would interview him for several hours, and he would just tell me, you know, his stories with Val and the vice commanders. There's 4 vice commanders that are permanent on his craft, Victor 1. There's another created being like Val named Yanaya, who's from Melchizedek, and another being who's from the opposite side of the universe called Yo or Yeo, Y-E-O. So, and he primarily works with Yanaya. So it's just fascinating to, you know, really get to hear all of these sort of side stories, and, you know, how Val built his own starship. I don't think I have a picture of it there. No, those are Victor 1s behind me. That is the Victor 1 poster. It has the blueprints right there to floor 1 and 2. This is the movie poster, and this is the original book poster when it came out. I have those on strangeratthepentagon.com. I don't have many of these left because they were like collector's items, you know, because they were left over from, you know, the old regiment when the book first came out.
I tried to find recently a first edition copy of The Stranger at the Pentagon, and they are very hard to find. I tried to order 3 of them, and when they all got delivered, they were all just reproductions. You know, somebody that had the original book and just photocopied it. And after my 3rd attempt, I was like, you know, it's not meant to be at this time.
And if you were to get a real one, it would cost you over $1,000. That when I've seen them on there, I have Dr. Frank's. I have like I think he had 1 or 2 copies, and I took them. You know, I mean, he didn't want them. You know, back in that edition, it really was just Valiant Thor's voice, you know, talking about the experience. And then over the years, he sort of retooled them. I think the next one came out in '67, which is let's see, this one. And then I think there was another revision in the 70s that has that same book cover. The one from '67 has a different ship, but it's similar. It's similar to that. So, but yeah, I even had the original like book plates.
Wow.
Which was so, it was just so cool to see how they did things back in those days,
Right.
not like today. So
Piece of history.
piece of history, yeah. And I actually have the big fold-out blueprints of Victor 1. Yeah.
Did the author draw the blueprints based on like what Thor told him?
No, Dr. Frank was on the ships, right? He's been on the ships. He was on the ships all the time. So he actually he had somebody here draw them up, right? And because he knew every inch of them because he was there.
Yeah.
He always told me, he walked, towards the end of his life, he walked a little slower. Of course, he needed glasses and things like that. He said, but Craig, when you go on the ship, you walk like you're a teenager. You don't need glasses. Everything works perfectly. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And I remember one time I had written a lot of questions for the vice commanders and Val, and Dr. Frank was going to Vegas. So he said they were going to pick him up and take him to the ship and he would stay overnight. And, and he called me from Las Vegas, right? And he sounded like he was 20 years old. And I said, Dr. Frank, why do you sound so young? He goes, I'm on the ship. And I was like, God, that's just amazing, because he had a number at home that they rigged up so that they could answer on the ship. And or they could call him from that number at his house, which I found fascinating. And that he wasn't the only contactee. There was another gentleman who lived in Van Nuys named Dr. Lee Nakamura, and he knew Val and them well before Dr. Frank, and he had devices in his house, like a device that could be on the floor where they can come up to him and appear in a hologram and talk to him and do things like that. He lived to be well over 100. And then they sort of said, you're going to have to come and live on the ship with us, because if you live on the ship, your life's going to be extended and we don't want to lose you. His son had moved to the Starship in the 70s because he met a girl from somewhere else, fell in love. They had their vows. And so whatever age he was when that happened, he stopped aging, which I also find fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are there any modern reports of Valiant Thor, or, is he still out there?
He's still out there. Yeah. He's not leaving Earth until the consciousness shifts into becoming fully conscious, right? So when you have created beings like Valiant Thor, which Dr. Frank put him in a seraphim category, he's in charge of this sector of the galaxy. And of course, especially working on Earth through consciousness raising programs and all things like that, to raise the consciousness, because when that happens, then we can rejoin that universal society that we lost many, 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 many years ago, right? And so nobody knows when that time frame is, but we see that we're accelerating a lot. We are definitely accelerating a lot. And a lot of the starseeds coming in, these children are speaking star languages. I mean, I met a boy who spoke 5 star languages. I got EVPs of Class A EVPs of a woman talking in another language, like a star language. I took it to everybody here. And no, everybody's, they said that's not a language on Earth. I gave it to the boy when he was here. He was 15 at the time. He's in his 20s now. And he said, they're saying they wanted to tell you that they built a base around the corner from your house. And he said, that's Pleiadians. That's Pleiadian language, right? Mm-hmm. And then I met another woman who lived in Arizona. She had a giant property that I visited several times. She had over 18 extraterrestrial races that had their energy on her property, right? And she spoke star languages. And in fact, what was interesting is the languages would come up on her arm, the writing in extraterrestrial script, sometimes on her forehead, and then they would also disappear. And I just, I was like, that is so fascinating. And I played it for her, and she said the same exact thing. She goes, that's a Pleiadian language. Huh. So, and her property was filled with orbs. When you took a picture, we would call it an orb storm. It's orb on top of orb on top of orb. There's thousands of them. Some are diamond shaped. I caught the first heart orb on her property.
I've never even heard of orbs, different shapes. You always hear the circular shape. A diamond one sounds, or a heart one.
Yeah, diamonds, hearts, and with colors.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. A lot of them had colors in them. So, so when I was there, I intuitively felt she was down this particular night, and she said, I just don't really want to be here on the planet anymore. And I said, you have to. You're just this bright light. You have so much to share. And I said, just this property alone, and all the work that you do. She writes books and does seminars and things like that. And I immediately felt Victor 1 lift off from Lake Mead in my head and come over her house. And I told her, I said, Victor 1 is now above your house. I said, let's go outside. And we saw a star up there. And I said, all right, so we all got our cameras out. And I said, I'm going to ask it to shoot down some beams, right? And then we would just start clicking, and then the beams would come down, blue beams would come down on the property. And I left that night hoping that she would be healed by them, because she was really in a bad way, and I was really worried about her. And she called a couple days later, and she said that Valiant Thor visited her in her bedroom and healed her.
Oh, wow.
And now she felt renewed. She really wanted to stay, and she's still thriving and teaching and writing books and
good,
all that good stuff. So,
wow.
And
I was curious. You mentioned Pleiadians. Did you meet Billy Meyer, or have you met him?
I never did, but I have to tell you, I would have loved to. I was fascinated with his case early on when I was sort of waking up, and, I bought all the books and all the videos. I used to go hear Randolph Winters speak about him a lot. As a matter of fact, when Guido Munzberger, who was in his group, came to the Bodhi tree to speak about it once, I went to that. And, it's just such a fascinating story. So, with all the proof of, the crafts and all that kind of stuff, a lot of people, just like they did with the Gulf Breeze case, right? They tried to say that he built models and that ship was a model. All of a sudden there was a model in the basement when he moved out, and and they said the same thing about Billy, but I think he did build models of them because he wanted people to see what they also look like, of what he was seeing, with what he captured on film as well. And now we know, because everybody has a camera, that those ships are wobbly. right? And there were beam ship sounds and things like that he had captured. What did you think about that case?
I have friends of mine that have also been very much involved in his research, and also they have actually had a chance to visit him, and they believe that he's definitely very credible. Then I hear on the other side, what you just explained, that that those pictures were taken with models and that, but I'm not sure overall MUFON has. I don't think they ever really came to a any conclusion. Still open for debate. But
yeah, they did on the Gulf Breeze.
Yeah.
I forget the gentleman's name, but he said there were so many witnesses who had seen the craft, had seen the beams coming down, and many witnesses that saw the beams, right, as well. And what was interesting is, remember those ships kind of look like beehives?
Yes.
Right?
They're round and
yeah, and sort of like this, a little bump and then a bump and then a little one on the bottom. Dr. Frank said to me one day, he said, the commander said to me, if you ever see a ship that looks like a beehive, run as far away as you can, that they are pure evil.
Wow.
And when I saw those ships, because I remember Mr. Walters saying that when those beams, they were always trying to hit him with blue beams, that when that was happening, he actually could hear on the ship humans screaming for their lives.
Wow.
So, it makes you wonder, were they abducting people and taking them somewhere else for experimentation? And, were they trying to get, Mr. Walters and his wife, as well? They never did get it, but, there were so many, that lasted for several years there. I put it in the UFO hotspot. This MUFON book that I did after ET Almanac, only because to me that was just such a fascinating tale. But what's interesting when you see people like that, Travis Walton, all of that, there's always somebody that comes up to try to discredit it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, we do know that there were government influencers who were paid to step out and do it. Philip Klass was one. Every time there was something, Philip Klass would say, "Oh, it was swamp gas." It was this, it was that. It was not credible. So that, just to put doubt into people's mind. And they've been doing that ever since, things have been going. That's why, ufology was laughed at for so long. Right. But not anymore.
I'm thinking of the group Arrow, the Air Force or Pentagon group. They're pretty much saying there's no evidence, or because they don't have it, supposedly.
Right.
And so they keep raising the doubt, but I don't know. I'm not looking at any government agency to say, yeah, they're here.
No.
Basically what people like yourself that are doing the research and finding what's out there and then bringing it to the public.
Yeah. I've met lots of abductees, contactees. People are having face-to-face. I put a couple of those contactees who are having face-to-face with extraterrestrials for, well over 10, 20 years in the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some fascinating interviews. And one of them has pictures.
Oh.
So we get to see, I think, about 5 or 6 of the beings. And it's just, it's just fascinating to hear all the various different stories and things. That was what I did when I got into this when I was 26. I studied contactee stories.
Wow.
To me, those were, the most interesting. That's why they did come to me for the ET Almanac. It's not a channeled book. It's a book based on contactee stories, contactee books, contactees that have passed away have done that. Wendell Stevens wrote a lot of those books. He was right in there with a lot of those contactees when it was going on and interviewing them, and say, he did that with Billy Meyer. He was down there with Billy Meyer for quite some time. So, I found that extremely fascinating. So it's fun.
So the book E.T. Almanac, it sounds like you mentioned, you compile. It's all very historical. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is in that respect. I didn't put a bibliography. I titled it Further Reading is really what the bibliography is. And further reading in the back of the book. So if you wanted to learn about the Clermers or the Itapurians or all these different various races, some of these books are out of print, right? You can't even get them. But I found where you could get them in a PDF format. So there, I would either give you the website or the place where you can go and buy the books in a PDF, so that if you wanted to learn more about them, you could go and get the full book and read about it. One of the fascinating ones where they were was a sort of lizard-looking guy from Rigel, and it was who his ship was seen over the Native American reservation, so they knew something was going to happen, and they brought up a 14-year-old Cherokee girl, and he wired her head with a neural thing and his head with one. And so they were able to talk, and he was just explaining, who they were, where they came from, so she could share it with, her tribe and that kind of thing. And he took her around and showed her the ship and various things. And when he put her back, what was fascinating is because she was wearing that neural thing, that transmitter, she remembered everything in vivid detail. So that was from a Wendell Stevens book. It was something in the Cherokee Girl, something like that. I can't remember that, but it's in the back in the bibliography. They were just really amazing looking beings,
Wow.
Yeah.
For the art in that book, is that something that you did, or is that composites of different witness sketches?
Oh, I wish I could draw. I wish I could, but I can't. No, I hired various artists to do the artwork.
Right? They did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. There was, and I'll be honest. Since then, I've redone all the artwork with an amazing artist who did all the artwork for the documentary. And I've been trying to get the publisher to do a color version of the ET Almanac with all the new pictures, right? And but they're not going for it just yet. So maybe if the documentary goes really, really well, they might think about it, because they said, printing color and that kind of stuff is a bit tricky. So but that would be fascinating. I mean, I would totally buy a ET Almanac book in full living Technicolor, updated.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just such a great resource.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody I know has it.
I give it as gifts quite frequently to anybody I know that's into the UFO thing. If I need a gift for them, your book is the first one that I go to.
Exactly. Well, if you order it off my website for a friend and you want me to sign it for them, you just tell me, and then I'll sign it and mail it to them.
I'll do that. I'm gonna do that on the next one.
Yeah.
Get myself one too.
Yeah, there you go.
You wouldn't mind? Can you give me your website?
Sure. It's autobiography of ANET.com.
Autobiography of
ANET.com. And then on the homepage is the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga book series. And then when you click on other books, that's where you can get the documentary, the ET Almanac book, UFO hotspots.
There it is, right there.
There you go. That makes it easy.
Awesome.
You know, that book, and I also have Universal Seal of Protection cards, which are Michael, Melchizedek, and Metatron. So people love that. Those are just amazing little postcards. So
great. I think I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alex. You're going to say something.
No. I think I was all set on that. So we got a couple of great clips that Craig is going to share with us, but perhaps before we hop into that, we can get into a quick break now, and then you take a look at those great clips.
Great.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
The experiencer phenomenon is happening for a lot of people just like you all over the world. People are telling very similar stories about personal encounters with non-human intelligence. The Mutual UFO Network has research, resources, and support to help you make sense of what is happening. Our experiencer community is growing every day. Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And we're back. Craig, to get us in, why don't we go ahead and pop up the trailer first to give people an idea what they're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
The U.S. government had at least 3 different projects to officially study UFOs.
The veils between our reality and the higher reality are getting thinner.
At this point in their evolution, Bashar's people, the Sasani, have developed the ability to see the structure of existence.
Earth itself is a type of science experiment by ascended beings.
The whole universe is teeming with life.
I acquire memories of being in my full 100% Arcturian self.
There are a number of different reasons why they are motivated to create hybrids.
There is a basis of love, purpose, and integrity that keeps us all together, not only as a cosmic family, but a family of divine purpose.
Everybody asks, what is their agenda? Why are they doing this?
They are opening the gate to global 5D consciousness, which is giving us a choice in our evolution.
They would like to help humanity.
His face reminded Betty of that of an Asian person.
They did have 2 arms, 2 legs, but their head was like elongated.
The skin color is typically going to be a greenish color or a grayish color.
The Mothman is this gigantic creature, looks kind of like a moth.
Those who are waiting for silver and gold spaceships to come and save humanity are waiting in vain.
Wow. Well, right off the bat, I can see that you have a lot of just great names on there.
Yes.
Yeah, let's look at the IMDb, and you have Desiree Hertok. You have Kathleen Martin, Paul Hynek, Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith. You have a lot of just a star-studded cast there.
Yeah, a very big star-studded cast, and the one thing that everybody always loves is the Snake Girl's tongue coming out at the end.
That's my favorite part too.
I said I have to CGI that thing.
So how did you go about getting all these people together to talk about it on the documentary? How did you choose which species kind of focus on?
Well, the thing is, of course, we had the 4 to choose from, and then I wanted to sort of throw in a cryptid or 2, right? Which we did with the Mothman with Chip Coffey. Chip's been a longtime friend of mine. He's been on many paranormal shows, Paranormal State, Kindred Spirits was the last one for Travel Channel for several seasons. But he actually has studied the Mothman, and he's been down there to the bunkers where they are and all of that. So
tell us more about that. I haven't heard much about the bunkers where they are.
Oh yeah. Well, this was the old bunkers where they were first seen, right? And where people, saw them. And then the young couple was chased in their car by it up in the air. Right. So, but there's been many cases of it, that kind of thing that people have seen it flying around or, things like that. So, and, they're in Point Pleasant. They have a whole museum there dedicated.
They have the big statue there in town.
that to the Mothman and all of that. So, I put all of that in the UFO hotspots. Wow. So what's great about UFO hotspots is you get to hear what the story is, the extended story. If there's a MUFON, finding or a Project Blue Book finding, on that case, but then it tells you where you can go, to see these different things. Like if you go to Giant Rock and the Integratron, which are synonymous because they're right next door to each other, you can drive to Giant Rock, but you can't just stop in at the Integratron. You have to make a reservation. And there's also a historian for Giant Rock, Barbara Harris, who allowed me to put her in the book because she'll take you out there at night, bring chairs, sky watch, tell you, the whole history of Giant Rock. She actually did Ancient Aliens as well, describing Giant Rock. The 3 sisters that own the Integratron now, they bought it many years ago. They almost lost it, and some woman passed away and left them their money and saved it. And they've refurbished it. They've kept it just beautiful, pristine, clean. They give the gorgeous sound baths up in the, the second floor. If you've never done that, you guys have to do it.
It's on my list.
You feel like you're levitating and you're starting to float because it's a sound chamber right under the dome. And there is no metal that connects any piece of wood. It's all wood within wood, right? So it was built specifically for that, to receive these energies. And it was built specifically on that plot of land given to George by Salganda, the being who gave him blueprints to build it, because there was a giant cache of quartz crystal below. So yeah, if you've never gone, you got to go. Go to integratron.com and just check everything out. So it's really great. I heard about it for years. I always wanted to go, and the first time I went was with Dr. Frank, because they wanted us to do they were going to start doing the retro UFO conventions, and so we went out there and met with the sisters. They closed the Integratron down, so we were sitting up in the second, where under the dome all day, just talking to them. And I didn't even know that Dr. Frank was there for the original conventions. He used to MC them all.
Really?
So I got to learn a lot more about the Integratron, even from Dr. Frank, by a firsthand person being there, every single year. At its height, there were over 10,000 people in the desert. It's like it's like Contact in the desert, but this was the first one. So
is that what evolved into Contact in the desert? Because I feel like that's in the same area.
No, it was kind of in the same area. Yeah, I mean, Contact in the desert originated where it used to be in these older grounds where there was like swamp coolers, and it was so hot. It was always in the middle of summer. But they moved it to a hotel where it's nice and air conditioned now. So. Yeah.
Craig, I was going to share with you that there's been Mothman sightings in Chihuahua, Mexico.
Oh.
I have a friend of mine, Heriberto Rivera. He runs an organization there, and he's taken on a couple of cases where witnesses had actually seen this creature that resembles the Mothman. And I put together a little PowerPoint. So see if I can find it, but it has the facts and all that. And as you know, that I guess with the Mothman sightings, it's foreboding. There's something. Events are going to happen, and sure enough, it kind of correlated with what was going on with Mexico with the drug cartels, and there was some major floods in Mexico affecting several states, and there were some other events I can't remember clearly, but yeah, it's that really fascinated me when I said, oh, yeah, if this is something not just in Pleasant Valley or
Pleasant
Point Pleasant, yeah, but it's now down here and beyond our border that's happening.
Yeah. Chip believed that when a Mothman is sighted, that they're coming with a warning that something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Not that they're creating it, but it just has something to do with that. And what's interesting is, are they interdimensional creatures? Are they inner Earth creatures? What are they exactly? Do they just still live on the thing? I watched I love that show, Paranormal Caught on Camera.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Because they catch some stuff. And one guy sort of caught like two Mothmen, like peering around a corner, because he was deep in these caverns walking for miles. And I was like, I would be terrified to do that. Right. And And when he shined his light in there, you saw these two Mothman kind of things peer their head out like that and then move back in. I said I would have ran at that point as fast as I could to get out of there. But yeah, fascinating.
I always like too the anecdote that the Mothman was first seen. I think it was a month or two before Adam West Batman was about to be released. So of course everyone wanted to call him the Batman or something along those lines, but they were too afraid of a copyright infringement or suing that he ended up being called the Mothman.
The Mothman, yeah.
So let's play another clip and have you talk about it and tell us about what we're seeing here.
Absolutely.
They have a simple parable that is taught on evolution at Melchizedek. From Old Globe to New Globe, theater in the round is dramatized in plays, one after another. Every individual acts out a role, switching roles, as one learns and grows within the characters of life. Each curtain call heralds a new drapery to rise. Time brings all characters to end their play only to bring a more evolutionized apprenticeship in a bigger part of the whole production, to transition into higher realms of life and consciousness.
So that's the Melchizedek section. Not a lot of people are not aware of what Melchizedek actually is.
Yeah.
They may have heard it in Old Testaments and things like that. Melchizedek priests, that type of thing. Here on Earth, in all of the studies that I've done on the inner Earth, there is a Melchizedek priest in ancient Lemuria below Mount Shasta in Telos, right? There are, when Richard Byrd went into the inner Earth, talked of meeting large beings, human beings who were far advanced from us. There were other books of tales, and people always talked about these priests in the big cities. So these priests, what they do is they're teaching the higher evolution of the universe and of yourself, right? And you go from being well here, for instance, we're on Earth, we're studying duality because we're dualistic. The fully conscious beings are not dualistic. Their heart and mind already rule together, right? But they still have the same emotions and things that we do. They just know how to handle them, right? So they never want to hurt anybody. So what's a beautiful thing about that, and I learned about it when I was writing Stranger at the Pentagon, is that Valiant Thor and his 4 vice commanders, Yanaya and Yo, when I would write about them, it was through this different kind of telepathy. It was, they would allow me to feel their feeling body. So I felt who they were on the inside, right? And so that's how telepathy is up there. There is nothing hidden. There's no hidden agendas. So there is a complete field of trust, of love, and all of that. So there, if there's any kind of two people might not be getting along, what they do is they will allow time to pass and then come together and talk about it amicably. For larger squabbles between civilizations, that's why they have the created beings who also are there, or the Melchizedeks. They have these, they're called the emergency Melchizedeks, that will go out and they will talk with them. They will show them various outcomes if they go to war. Literally show them various outcomes. Could you imagine if that would happen before any war that happened on this planet?
It might stop some.
Yeah, you might wonder if they might have rethunk it, right? If they might have rethunk it. So, but Melchizedek is we call it the University of Melchizedek because it's sort of like the super college of the universe. Everybody will go back to Melchizedek and learn. And then if they want to take on a lifetime on another planet and learn science or whatever, then they'll go and take on a lifetime there. Those lifetimes will be a lot longer than ours here. Ours are short. But a lot of the fully conscious beings, they live anywhere from, some 500, some 3,000, some 5,000 years. And of course, the created beings, they're immortal. They can live for, they live forever. We live forever too, right? Our soul lives forever too. But they're in the same body, but they can transpose that body and like if they wanted to look different, because I've talked to a couple of people on Earth where there was a man in Miami when he was a young man. He was always thinking about the universe and how it worked, and then all of a sudden he started seeing glints of silver in the sky. And then all of a sudden, a 5'6" man with short blonde hair and blue eyes approached him and said, we've been listening to your thoughts. And he said, I'm here to actually answer all your questions. And so he was in contact with this man for 7 months, had many sessions with him. And the man ultimately revealed that he was a created being, but that he had created that particular form for him. So, because he knew that it would be less threatening to him. And what's fascinating is George Van Tassel, when those beings came to him, they looked similar to that, and they were 5'6". Right? So it's interesting. Valiant Thor is I think 6 foot or 6'1". Yanaya's very tall. But the rest of the vice commanders are normal height.
When you say normal height, like
our height,
Gotcha.
I think Teal is maybe 5'7", 5'8". Dawn might be 6 foot. Thawne, I think, might be 5'9", 5'10".
I was curious, Craig, in your research, did you ever come across any beings that look like amphibians?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're called one of them. They're called Yargans, IAGRANS. Let me see. I think I put them in this book. I think I did. It'll take too long for me to find it, but it was another contactee case, and they were very benevolent. They were originally sea creatures that sort of developed into, humans with 2 arms, 2 legs. Their skin resembled a seal's skin. They sort of had, their heads went back. The females had some hair. The males, some of them had a little hair, some of them didn't. And they were very interesting looking. Let me see if I can find it in the book while I'm just talking about it. But what was fascinating is that their world was mostly water, and that just on the little bit of land that they had, they built these giant round buildings, sort of like the Capitol Records building, but extremely tall. And that's where they all lived, in those structures. And it also had other things about them. Oh, this is the Regalian being I was telling you about. That was with the 14-year-old Cherokee girl.
Mm-hmm.
And Let's see if I find them. Yeah, no, I don't know where it is. I might not have put it in here, but it was. They're just. It was a fascinating race.
I also, when you were talking there, I was thinking. I don't know if you read this book by Gordon Cooper, who was our past an astronaut, called Leap of Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he met a companion, a woman that looked very much like a Nordic,
right?
And he was being guided by her, and I was just fascinated to hear him as an astronaut and a fighter pilot, and then him shifting over and talking about the encounters that he had and others, and then following this woman that looked like a Nordic. I thought, wow.
Yeah, there are several cases of that. And I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name. I have an expert who, he's passed away, but I have an expert in the documentary who actually talks about him in our Draconian section. Because while he was working for the government building things, and when they landed on the moon, he was watching the feeds from the moon, right, as well. And he said that they had several Nordics there working and guiding them as well. Yeah. I mean, so fascinating. You know, my father, not the one that we talked about, but he worked for an aerospace company that probably built all this kind of stuff, but he could never talk about it, and we could never visit his work. We could go in the lobby, and that was about it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You kind of touched a little bit on the inner Earth there. What are your thoughts on the inner Earth or the Hollow Earth theory or Agartha? All these kind of inner Earth areas.
Well, my friend who does the inner Earth segment in the book has traveled the world extensively. She was with George Van Tassel when he started channeling below giant rock. So she's been around. She knows everyone and everything. But she also had befriended two Lemurians from Telos, who she is still friends with. And so all her information comes directly from people who lived there. They don't live there anymore. One of their rules is if you met somebody on the surface and wanted to live with them, you couldn't bring them into the society. You had to live on the surface. So that's what happened with one of these individuals. And it's just fascinating to hear about it. That's a really great section, by the way, the inner Earth. And I myself wish that I could visit it. When I go to sleep, a long time ago, I would always say, I want to visit the inner Earth. I want to visit the inner Earth, because, if they invite you there, you could go there in your astral form and look at it. And I did one night. I didn't get to see a civilization, but what I got to see was an oasis underground. Yeah. And, they have different kinds of lighting that goes on there. They have rocks that glow, right? It is said that the Vatican has a ton of these rocks stored way below the thing, and they're still glowing to this day. They have a central sun as well on the inner Earth. And that cloud cover, sort of synchronizes with day and night, and that kind of thing over some of the civilizations there. you know, and it's fascinating to think that we've seen plesiothoruses on, you know, up here. They're seen more and more. So it's just fascinating to wonder how many, you know, of the creatures from the dinosaur time still might be living on the inner Earth, right? So, I mean, nobody really knows. I mean, nobody knows until you go. But it's nice to hear stories from people who live there, right? Or claim to live there. Again, you know, I tell everybody it's a judgment and your own belief, if you want to believe it or not. You know, if you met somebody from Lemuria, you would know it. You would feel a different energy.
Have you ever read or heard of a book called The Coming Race?
No.
Oh, it's a really good one, especially if you're into the Hollow Earth. So this was by a guy named Edward Bulwer Lytton, and it was actually written in 1871. But that book describes, it's kind of written, it's hard to tell. It's definitely like categorized as more of a fiction, but it describes essentially somebody working in the mines, and they break through a hole in the mine and they find themselves in an underground city. And what he's describing is exactly what you just described, Craig. He's describing some kind of light source. He's describing an inner sun. Yeah. And it's even more fascinating to read because 1871, you know, they didn't have streetlights. They didn't have these frames of reference.
Right. That's right.
So to just hear his, you know, his description of it, definitely one to look up if you're into the topic.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
I'm always interested in the Hollow Earth. I had another witness through MUFON. This was a guy out of Russia that I talked to. I was actually able to get a sample of something interesting that he had from Russia to be used at the last symposium for MUFON. But this guy talked to me about how, as kind of a side hobby, him and some friends, they love to study, you know, the old things from World War II, specifically the Anunnaki and kind of their operations. They were able to somehow get their hands on a bunch of documents, you know, World War II documents from this organization. And they were able to pinpoint, based on the research of those documents, that the Germans had found at least three entrances to the inner Earth. 2 of them being in Russia and 1 of them being in Italy on the island of Ischia. The witness then relayed to me that, you know, him and his team actually traveled to Italy, to this island, and they found the markers that were described. You know, there were essentially rocks that were carved that led you to a trail, and they descended 100 feet, 100 yards down, 100 meters down, something like that, deep into the cavern, where they found, you know, at first it looked like, you know, just regular rock cavern. The deeper they went, the walls got straight and very smooth. And 100 meters down where their rope ran out, they got down to like a ledge where they could keep looking, and it kept going down more. But there on the ledge, they found a carved swastika that kind of, you know, really tied it all together to them that, you know, they were really there.
They were there. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, Alex, you were talking about the inner Earth. Another famous author during that time, I believe, was Jules Verne.
Yeah.
He wrote Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes.
I think that was also around the same time frame, right?
Around the same time. He was another great example of, you know, writing ahead of his time, describing things like submarines and all these other just fantastical technological advances. You have to wonder if, you know, those kind of authors, because you hear about it, you know, that people get implanted these ideas of either it's technological, it's a story or something. It could be that Jules Verne and this other author both received around the same time, you know, that download of, you know, hey, there's a city underground, and they both decided to write about it.
Yeah, we know that it does come from downloads. I mean, I know that because in all my writing, a lot of it comes from downloads. And also, Gene Roddenberry got everything from downloads. He talked about it, right? So I find that also, you know,
when
really
you mean downloads?
Downloads about, you know, the whole society in the ships, you know, the doors, you know, all that was the very first time we saw that kind of technology, right? Remember, even in Next Generation, where they had the ear things, and then all of a sudden, you know, we have earbuds, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a whole thing on Star Trek technology. which is, like, I think there's even a book written about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it never occurred to me about the air. I mean the air.
Yeah.
I'm under the, I believe in the theory too that, a lot of people are getting these downloads, but not everybody knows what it is. Some people wake up and they say, "Oh, I had a weird dream about atomic energy. How cool!" And they go on about their day. And then some people say, "I had this energy about atomic energy. Let me know, write down what I remember." And they say, "Oh man, yeah, this is telling me some interesting information."
Right.
So I think it's just a lot of people we all might be getting them. You just don't realize it at the time what to do with that information, or that is, something important and significant to do.
When all of this started happening to me when I was around 26 years old, they explained to me that a lot of the downloads are like a contact pill with all those little dots in them. And they said it's time released. So when your consciousness is ready to receive it, it will then come through you as intuition. Right? So we all get a lot of intuitive thoughts. And isn't it interesting when somebody receives something, all of a sudden you might see 3 movies about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Or 3 things that somebody made of something that was brand new tech, but they all received it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's interesting. The download does go out, to a lot of people, and that kind of thing, and sometimes just to individuals.
Yeah. Craig, do you believe in synchronicity?
Oh, completely.
Your life is filled with synchronicity, Craig.
So filled with synchronicity.
Could you elaborate on
well, I mean, I can't think of anything specific now, but there's always been, things just come together. Well, I'll tell you, when with Stranger at the Pentagon, when I was making the short film, I didn't have any money, right? I had to raise money. I had to, I could write it. That was easy for me. It was already written, and I just had to take the little scenes and condense them, and I just put them in a sequence that might make sense and leave it with a cliffhanger ending, right? And but Teal, one of the vice commanders, she said to me upon waking one morning, she said, "It's time to make a short film." Where she has this very sweet voice. She says, "It's time to make a short film. I want you to contact this person in your class," because I teach acting. "He has a camera. He'll film it. And I want you to do a crowdfunding campaign. You're going to make a little over $5,000. That's all you need to get started. We will do the rest." So I did that, right? And then I started thinking, I made a little over $5,000, literally. And then I brought in producers I know from productions I do. So they got me the sets, they got me the big green screens, they got me everything that would cost a fortune. Like that would be $100,000 a day on a real movie, what we did. And so I got all the locations and the sets for free through them.
Wow.
And I also got James Cameron's visual effects coordinator, who came and helped me for free, met me for dinner so many times, just teaching me about the green screen and everything. Was such a beautiful guy. And then, I said, I was sitting around one day and I said, I really want a red camera. I don't want to use my students', little rinky-dink camera. And then the next day I get a phone call. I said, "Hey, I was telling my buddy who's a DP, he has a red camera. I was telling him about your short. And he said he really wants to shoot it and he'll do it for free." And I said, "Well, he doesn't have to do it for free. We'll pay him. Not much, but we'll pay him." So I got my red camera. And anything I asked for, it showed up.
Wow.
Almost immediately. That was a very synchronistic time in making the film. And then it just, me never thinking it would ever go out into the public, and then how it just exploded because people want to know about this story, right? So imagine millionaires out there who want to fund my film. Imagine what a big feature film would look like.
I think you being on our program is synchronistic.
Yes.
Someone out there is going to see it and connect with you, most likely.
George Nuri always said that to me. He said, you just keep talking about it. I'll talk about it on Coast. And he did a lot. And he said, someday somebody's going to be listening and they're going to fund it. And I said, well, I hope so. And it's all in timing, right? Because I had shelved the project after Dr. Frank died until Teal came and said that, right? And everything literally was there. When we were filming in the big sound stages, we actually caught up high above orbs this big, gigantic orbs, right? And I had once in 98 when I visited Bell Rock and Sedona, there were giant Glinda the Good Witch orbs, as I call them, and they had all these different designs. They were milk white and they had all these amazing patterns in them. And they were photographed. They were next to me on Bell Rock, right? And so I always wondered what they were. And at the time, I knew Sylvia Brown, the famous psychic, and I showed her. She goes, "Oh, honey, those are angels." She said, "That's angels." And I showed it to a few other people too, who were psychics, and they said the same thing. And or I look at it as sort of like angelic consciousness that you can tap into, right? So, and also one time when it showed up, I was on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. I said, "Oh, it was there for protection," because I never felt so many dark spirits on Bourbon Street in my life, because I'm really sensitive to that stuff, So
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and cue up another clip for us here about the Alpha Centaurians.
Oh, that sounds great.
Alpha Centaurians have not been the ones that shared their genetics with us. They come as planetary instructors. I have physically climbed inside the spacecraft on several occasions over these years. And in one of them, I went to a Navy submarine base in the sea. And in another, physically accompanied them to Ganymedes, one of Jupiter's moon, where they have adapted artificial life.
Is that Sexto Paz?
Sixto Paz, yeah, Sixto Paz Wells. Yeah, he's one of the many contactees of the Alpha Centaurians. Ricardo Gonzalez is another one.
Yeah.
I worked with Ricardo in the book version, right, and with Sixto for the film. I've met other gentlemen from South America who have also been in contact. And I remember back in the 70s, there was another gentleman who was in contact with them, and they're all in contact with Antaral, who is he's 8 or 9 feet tall, blonde Nordic. His wife's name is Ivica. And it's just so fascinating. It's one of the most fascinating cases around, because so many people have met them in person. And when they come here, I'll just give you one quick little story. A dear friend of mine went out with a group with Ricardo Gonzalez. It was 50 plus people out to Sand Flats. It's all big open area, and then it's all pine trees around it. You see Mount Shasta in the background.
Yeah.
And they were Antaral told Ricardo to bring them there, and that he would bring the ships in at night, and that he had handpicked, on Tyrol, handpicked 7 people to go into the forest to meet him. So anyway, so they did some singings, some dancing, some chanting, because that's how you pull that vibration in. Even on my friend's property I told you about earlier in Arizona, she when you did that, all the energy would escalate, right? When you would sing, dance, chant, that kind of thing. Like you could take a picture and there's no orbs. You sing and dance, you take a picture, there's 1,000 orbs.
When
right?
you do the singing and dancing, are you doing anything in particular, like any ceremonial or just
whatever you want, anything that comes from joy.
Oh, okay.
Right? Anything that comes from joy. So anyway, they all stayed out there. The ship did come in, set a beam down. They saw the whole forest light up. Ricardo took the small group in, and everyone was told to go back to base camp. My friend stayed seated in his chair and watched it from like 100 yards away, he said. And he said, the whole floor was lit up in this blue. Wow. And what they do is they open up what they call a Zendra. A Zendra is a portal, but it's not the kind of portal we would think of. It's if they're on the ship and they open a Zendra, they're standing inside the ship. So the people who came to see him, he was in the ship, standing in the Zendra, and they were standing on Earth. If they had stepped over the threshold, they would be on the ship.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Like a
Stargate. What's that?
So like a Stargate concept?
No, they call it a Zendra. That's what they call it. But it's not. It's just here and there, right? Here and there. So it could be a Stargate if you want to call it that. But you don't go through any kind of whooshing or anything like that. Exactly. But Sixto has been on their ships over 100 times, right?
I met him in person at a conference.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
Amazing guy, and the Mission Rama was the group of people from Peru that. We learned it. I was going to classes on that, on the meditation phase of that to initiate contact. Well, it was a long time ago, but
right.
I was always impressed with Sextopas.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He only speaks Spanish. He wanted to do the documentary in English, so he did, as you can see, which was really great. But he goes in and he really talks about the Alpha Centaurians. We do have the original drawings from of Ontaral and Ivica that Ricardo had done. So the artist of that allowed us to recreate them so that you would see what Ontaral and Ivica look like as well. So needless to say, those people came out. My friend said each one walked out separately, and he talked to each of them, and he said he felt like most of them, it must have been what Moses felt like when he came out from seeing the burning bush, right? So he said they were just, in a daze. A few of them freaked out. And he and Ontaral just kept saying, "No, calm down, calm down."
Wow.
That kind of thing. So, yeah, that was really, really fascinating. But also what's fascinating is, there's different information in all their books. Like Ricardo Gonzalez, you'll hear about all the stuff that they do for the people in South America. So, I mean,
do they appear mostly in South America?
Yeah, they do. They do. They just sort of take care of the culture. You know, they help heal people. They help with everything. So, and the star people to them are like neighbors. They know when they're going to come. And, you know, if they have somebody who is sick or whatever, you know, they have things to give them, or, you know, they can heal them with a thought. You know, Teal and the vice commanders, of course, including Valiant Thor, they can heal with a thought and with a touch. Right. So, yeah, it's really fascinating. I think the other clip you have is Paul Hynek talking about the minute.
Yeah, I was saving the best for last.
Save that for last. So, of course, let's just preempt it by people that don't know. Paul Hynek's father was J. Allen Hynek, the head of Project Blue Book, right? So MIBs were always tied to Project Blue Book for people who had seen extraterrestrials or had seen craft, that these men in black would go and threaten them and, you know, to keep quiet and silence them. So, okay, why don't you show it?
Imagine if in the 1940s you have seen or experienced what you feel to be a alien encounter, how traumatic it would be to you. And then on the heels of that, to get a visit to your door from two very mysterious, serious men dressed in black, telling you not to talk about what you have seen, asking if you have any evidence of any kind, and acting overall in a super intimidating and threatening manner, telling you of the grave consequences that would befall you were you not to obey what they told you to do.
Now, the Men in Black are always a very interesting topic. What's your opinion, Craig, on if they are, you know, government agents, or if they are, you know, other beings entirely?
It could be a little mixture of both, I think, because there's been so many diverse stories. And from what Paul said, you know, they talked about it. I have it all in ET Almanac, about the regiments and things that were a part of, that was said to be a part of the Men in Black, because, you know, the retrievals and all of that had to be kept extremely silent, and because they were reverse engineering everything, right? You know, way back when they wanted the organic consciousness technology, especially from Valiant Thor. Of course, he wasn't going to give it to him. You know, it's just too dangerous. But now I saw Dr. Sala came out with something where somebody's talking about the government now has organic technology. So, you know, they're literally thinking ships that are married to the actual pilot, and the pilot maneuvers it by their own thought. Yeah.
I mean, the Men in Black, there's always been, I feel like in a lot of the stories that you heard, you know, back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you just hear really interesting things about them. They're described as, you know, sometimes they come out of nowhere, you know, they just kind of appear.
Right.
Sometimes, you know, the later, you know, 80s, 90s, 2000s, you hear them driving immaculately pristine, you know, 40s cars, you know, something that looks like it should be out of a museum or should be in someone's collection. These guys are driving around. Sometimes they're described as their skin being, you know, almost translucent, or like a very paper-like, or they look very gaunt, kind of like almost sickly. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, and I'm sure you've seen it on all the shows where the two Men in Black walked into a hotel, and they totally look like Men in Black.
Oh, yeah.
And there's been descriptions of them with everything that you've said. Also some where they're with the translucent skin with almost Asian appearing eyes, but with blue, like piercing blue eyes.
Yeah.
As well. So I think it might be a little bit of both, and to think that if somebody was trying to confuse everybody, they might try and change it up to make it confusing for the public. Exactly what it is. You know, the interesting story is Alfred K. Bender.
Yes, my favorite.
I love him, and he was just a dude in the Midwest that had a little 200 people.
Connecticut, actually.
Connecticut. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
He lives because it's right around the corner from where my brother lives, so that's why I'm always next time I go to visit him, I want to go and check out and see the area.
Oh yeah, that would be great. And he had a UFO club. He really, in a letter he wrote to everybody and sent out, he wanted to do like a group meditation to call in everybody, and actually it was calling occupants of interplanetary craft. It's basically the Klaatu song that Klaatu made into a thing. So I had to get the Klaatu song to play over the end titles, which I did. I contacted Terry Draper on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote this, he co-wrote the song and sung it. It's just one of my favorite songs. I just think, the message of it is really beautiful and all of that. So it's said that he was one of the first cases, but one of the other cases was with a donut-shaped craft that was dropping metal. I know the name of it. I can't think of it.
Yeah, I know the one too.
You know which one I'm talking about. The guy had a son and a dog, and I think the metal. There were 6. I remember there were 6 donut-shaped.
Was this in Washington?
Craft. No, it was.
Oh, Point. Yeah, it was a bay, named after a bay, or
yeah.
Point.
Man, it makes me crazy.
See,
I have too many UFO stories in my head. So
he was an earlier MIB?
Yeah, that one I think was the first one.
Was it Harbor?
And I think that Alfred might have been the second, or it could be the other way around. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember what the timeline is, but what they did was back in those days, Saucerian Press was done by
him and Bender.
Mr. Gray. What's his name? Something Gray.
Shag Harbor. Is that the name of it?
Shag Harbor. That's a different one, but that's a totally different one. But that one dropped stuff too. Because I have that in my book here, because I talked to Chris, who is a MUFON investigator, on that. Shag Harbor, Chris Stiles and Doug Ledger. Well, of course, you go through every friggin' page, and you never can find the page that you want. The minute I'm done with the show, it'll probably
it's gonna pop up
in there, and there it will be. But let's just say I'm almost there.
I've only had one case so far with Men in Black, but it was a pretty good one. It was it was a Colorado-based case, and it was a witness messaged me and they said, hey, I wanted to follow up on a like an in-person MUFON interview I had, a little bit back ago, but it seems kind of weird to me. So it's like, all right, tell me about it. So they're outside walking their dog at night and they see a craft. So then they report it to MUFON. So I was able to look back into it. I see the case they reported, but I do see in the notes that, the MUFON investigator reached out to them, but was unable to make contact. So the case was closed as, couldn't reach them, couldn't get more information out of them. Mm-hmm. The witness recalls that she reports it to MUFON, and then days later or so, she gets a call from somebody claiming to be MUFON saying, hey, let's meet to talk about the experience. So they have her go to a hotel, and she goes up to the room with them and she's talking to them. The witness says she has a very good memory of people's faces, but in her memory, one of the people's faces is completely blank. Like she can see hair, but just doesn't recall any facial features at all. The second Men in Black she describes as looking like Conan O'Brien. So red hair, but looking almost exactly like him.
Mm-hmm.
So the witness recalls this. She recalls, talking to them. Doesn't recall what they talked about, just that she was at the hotel, they talked, and then it was kind of a blur. The only thing that brought it back to her memory was she was driving by the hotel, and she says, wait a minute, this hotel looks familiar. I feel like I've been here before. And that's when she prompted me to reach out to be like, hey, can you tell me more about this meeting I had in the hotel with the two MUFON guys? And I had to come back to her and say, we don't have a record of that. We reached out to you at MUFON, but we didn't actually get in contact with you. So we don't actually know who you talked to or why they claim to be MUFON. But that was the only instance that I've had where it was, very interesting that, the circumstances of that.
Wow. And just think about how many more cases there are out there that are never even reported because people don't want to say anything.
Oh, yeah. I've done a search before in the MUFON database for just Men in Black, and it comes up with hundreds of cases. I went through and read through a bunch of them. I started compiling them for a minute there just to, compare them. But there were just so many that, it was a lot.
Wow.
But they're still out there. They're still operating.
I got contacted by an individual who claimed he was part of the Men in Black, but was connected with the government, and he was saying that they weren't driving those vehicles, private vehicles anymore. That they were basically incorporating the van fleet or the vehicle fleet of the government to get around. And I wrote up something and I forwarded to the heads to give our MUFON leadership a heads up. I'm trying to find that letter, but it's still very much prevalent and still
amazing. We could just go on forever, and there's just so many stories, so many.
Well, Craig, we only have a couple of minutes here. Anything else you want to tell us about? Any upcoming projects that you're working on, or any places you're going to be over this season?
I will. Sorry to say I don't know the name of the conference, but I'm going to be at a conference. Lorian Fenton's doing it in.
Oh, you're going to be here in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And is it May?
April. I think it's right at the beginning of April, that first weekend. So I'll be there showing the documentary, talking about the ET Almanac. I'll have DVDs and books and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the UFO Con.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So Plaza Building. I hope to be there too just to visit. So
that'd be great.
I'll drop by and say hello to you.
Yeah, come by and find me and all of that. And really, just getting the documentary out there. Like I said, the rent the documentary, and then when you put up buy the DVD. If you guys have a DVD player, you'll want the DVD because you're going to want to watch it a million times. There's so much information in there. Then it'll go worldwide, like in April. It's the distributor, it takes that amount of time to sell all the licenses to all of the various outlets. So
I think you mentioned we can expect to see it on Amazon at some point.
It will be on Amazon at some point. Amazon already licensed it, so that made me happy right off the bat. They were like one of the first. I was like, good.
You can find everything on Amazon, right?
Find everything on Amazon. And so I'm just, doing, going around, talking about the documentary, all of that. I mean, we have so many people. We have hybrids in there. We have a mantis hybrid, an Arcturian hybrid. If you don't know what a hybrid is, get the documentary. You're going to learn what a hybrid is. Just fascinating. And also, Chris Bledsoe, who has one of the #1 books in the UFO section on Amazon, UFO of God. He's also in it. He talks about the Lady of Light, not about his thing was a MUFON. Way in the beginning, it was a MUFON case. And I remembered seeing it on like a Discovery Channel or something like that.
Yeah.
And then as years went by, people started to see it. His story is just, I mean, it's an amazing story, but his story about the Lady of Light is especially interesting. So that's fun. And, everyone can just, I'm everywhere online. So you can follow me, on the website here. You can subscribe. So when I send out email blasts, you'll get the latest of what's going on and all that kind of stuff. So
you're on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. That's all I can do. I can't do any more.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Well, thank you, Craig. There's no shortage of media. If you haven't read his books, check them out. Definitely check out the documentary. If you haven't seen Stranger at the Pentagon, that's another great one. And next time you're watching your favorite sci-fi movie, check the credits for Craig's name. I'm sure he'll be there.
I'll be there somewhere for sure. I know people are always calling me up. I just saw your name. So well, thank
Craig,
you guys so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Craig.
We hope to do this again soon.
Yes, thank you. Happy to come back and talk to you guys. Thank you for having me.
Until next time.
Keep us appraised of any synchronistic events that come up.
I will. Thank you. And hopefully I'll see you at the beginning of April, yes, Ruben. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Craig.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.